In history, there's often a debate whether history is really run by the great men of history, the Caesars, the Napoleons. Are they the ones that really dictate how history works? Well, when turning to Russia and looking at its centralization, or the so-called quote-unquote westernization of Russia, it's likely we can say, yes, there is, at least in this case, a great man of history leading the state. And that is the Tsar, or leader of Russia, Peter the Great. Now, Peter was an imposing figure. It's alleged he was about 6 foot 8 inches in height, literally towering over any of his contemporaries. And he needed to be an imposing figure given what he wanted to accomplish with Russia. Russia had always had, if you will, 1 foot in Europe and 1 foot in Asia. And Peter sought to remake Russia along European lines. Early in his rule, for example, he went out and tried to travel Europe and learn from the different powers and see what it was that they were doing and what he could bring back and adopt in Russia. He was famous for traveling around in peasant garb, I guess somehow thinking that people wouldn't notice the 6 foot 8 inch person that they'd never seen before and not realize he was a king. But at any rate, he loved traveling around, he loved visiting different capitals, trying to find out how Europeans were working, how they were building their governments. I've chosen this image for this Carpenter Peter statue because one of the things that really fascinates him is the development of modern navies in, say, the Netherlands and elsewhere. He's obsessed with trying to build a similar navy for his Russian state. When he came back, Peter attempted to reform his state from the largest to smallest detail. He made his nobles shave their beards, which would make them more clean-shaven and thus more French. He went on a massive military building spree to assemble an army capable of defeating an old enemy, Sweden. He created modern military reforms. But the best example of his vision to transform the state is the creation of a new capital, St. Petersburg, depicted here. He wanted to create a model city that looked like those that he had seen in Europe. He committed to building huge boulevards, large palaces, something that looked like the big states that he had seen before. He even placed this city on the sea. He functionally built over this small fishing village because he wanted it to be an area that would attract a navy, that would help develop the navy that he wants for Russia. Now, he wanted to create in St. Petersburg, if you will, a window on the world that represented his vision for a new and powerful and Western Russia. You can see this influence in terms of trying to copy those of the rest of Europe in some of the buildings he built, such as this, his palace, the Peterhof in St. Petersburg. If you've seen images of Versailles, this should look similar to it because what he's attempting to do is follow in the footsteps of the kings like Louis XIV. Now, the problem for Peter was, as much as he was attempting to transform Russia, it was ultimately dependent upon his rule and his person. After his death, the reforms that he initiated started to falter. The commitment to, if you will, westernization started to end. Peter, in many ways, underscores the struggle that Russia is going to face throughout its period, and in its history and in its politics. Do they try to copy what the West is doing, or do they try to go their own way? The tensions of that decision in Russia are not simply something that Peter is going to tackle, but Russian leaders up to the present are still struggling with today. And so Peter the Great not only tries to transform his country, he also underscores a tension that will be common in Russian history.